Section 1 of The Girl from the Marsh Croft. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Lars Rolander. The Girl from the Marsh Croft by Selma Lagerlöf. Translated by Velma Swanston Howard. The Girl from the Marsh Croft, Chapter 1. It took place in the courtroom of a rural district. At the head of the judges' table sits an old judge, a tall and massively built man with a broad, rough-hewn visage. For several hours he has been engaged in deciding one case after another, and finally something like disgust and melancholy has taken hold of him. It is difficult to know if it is the heat and closeness of the courtroom that are torturing him, or if he has become low-spirited from handling all these petty wrangles, which seem to spring from no other cause than to bear witness to people's quarrel mania, uncharitableness, and greed. He has just begun on one of the last cases to be tried during the day. It concerns a plea for help in the rearing of a child. This case had already been tried at the last court session, and the protocols of the former suit are being read. Therefore one learns that the plaintiff is a poor farmer's daughter, and the defendant is a married man. Moreover, it says in the protocol, the defendant maintains that the plaintiff has wrongfully, unjustly, and only with the desire of profiting thereby sued the defendant. He admits that at one time the plaintiff had been employed in his household, but that during her stay in his home he had not carried on any intrigue with her, and she has no right to demand assistance from him. The plaintiff still holds firmly to her claim, and after a few witnesses have been heard, the defendant is called to take the oath and show cause why he should not be sentenced by the court to assist the plaintiff. Both parties have come up and are standing side by side before the judge's table. The plaintiff is very young and looks frightened to death. She is weeping from shyness, and with difficulty wipes away the tears with a crumpled handkerchief, which she doesn't seem to know how to open out. She wears black clothes, which are quite new and whole, but they fit so badly that one is tempted to think she has borrowed them in order to appear before the court of justice in a befitting manner. As regards the defendant, one sees at a glance that he is a prosperous man. He is about 40 and has a bold and dashing appearance. As he stands before the court, he has a very good bearing. One can see that he does not think it a pleasure to stand there, but he doesn't appear to be the least concerned about it. As soon as the protocols have been read, the judge turns to the defendant and asks him if he holds fast to his denials and if he is prepared to take the oath. To these questions the defendant promptly answers a curt yes. He digs down in his vest pocket and takes out a statement from the clergyman, who attests that he understands the meaning and import of the oath and is qualified to take it. All through this the plaintiff has been weeping. She appears to be unconquerably bashful, and doggedly keeps her eyes fixed upon the floor. Thus far she has not raised her eyes sufficiently to look at the defendant in the face. As he utters his yes, she starts back. She moves a step or two nearer the court, as if she had something to say to the contrary, and then she stands there perplexed. It is hardly possible, she seems to say to herself. He cannot have answered yes. I have heard wrongly. Meanwhile the judge takes the clergyman's paper and motions to the court officer. The latter goes up to the table to find the Bible, which lies hidden under a pile of records, and lays it down in front of the defendant. The plaintiff hears that someone is walking past her and becomes restless. She forces herself to raise her eyes just enough to cast a glance over the table, and she sees then how the court officer moves the Bible. Again it appears as though she wished to raise some objection, and again she controls herself. It isn't possible that he will be allowed to take the oath. Surely the judge must prevent him. The judge is a wise man, and knows how people in her home district think and feel. He knew very likely how severe all people were as soon as there was anything which affected the marriage relation. They knew of no worse sin than the ones she had committed. Would she ever have confessed anything like this about herself if it were not true? The judge must understand the awful contempt that she had brought down upon herself, and not contempt only, but all sorts of misery. No one wanted her in service. No one wanted her work. Her own parents could scarcely tolerate her presence in their cabin, and talked all the while of casting her out. Oh, the judge must know that she would never have asked for help from a married man had she no right to it. Surely the judge could not believe that she lied in a case like this, that she would have called down upon herself such a terrible misfortune if she had had any one else to accuse than a married man. And if he knows this, he must stop the oath taking. She sees that a judge reads through the clergyman's statements a couple of times, and she begins to think he intends to interfere. True, the judge has a weary look. Now he shifts his glance to the plaintiff, and with that his weariness and disgust become even more marked. It appears as though he were unfavorably disposed toward her. Even if the plaintiff is telling the truth, she is nevertheless a bad woman, and the judge cannot feel any sympathy for her. Sometimes the judge interposes in a case, like a good and wise counsellor, and keeps the parties from ruining themselves entirely. But to-day he is tired and cross and thinks only of letting the legal process have its course. He lays down the clergyman's recommendation, and says a few words to the defendant to the effect that he hopes he has carefully considered the consequences of a perjured oath. The defendant listens to him with a calm air which he has shown all the while, and he answers respectfully and not without dignity. The plaintiff listens to this in extreme terror. She makes a few vehement protests and wrings her hands. Now she wants to speak to the court. She struggles frightfully with her shyness and with the sobs which prevent her speaking. The result is that she cannot get out an audible word. Then the oath will be taken. She must give it up. No one will prevent him from swearing away his soul. Until now she could not believe this possible. But now she is seized with the certainty that it is close at hand, that it will occur the next second. A fear more overpowering than any she has hitherto felt takes possession of her. She is absolutely paralyzed. She does not even weep more. Her eyes are glazed. It is his intention, then, to bring down upon himself eternal punishment. She comprehends that he wants to swear himself free for the sake of his wife. But even if the truth were to make trouble in his home, he should not for that reason throw away his soul's salvation. There is nothing so terrible as perjury. There is something uncanny and awful about that sin. There is no mercy or condonation for it. The gates of the infernal regions open of their own accord when the perjurer's name is mentioned. If she had then raised her eyes to his face, she would have been afraid of seeing it stamped with damnation's mark, branded by the wrath of God. As she stands there and works herself into greater and greater terror, the judge instructs the defendant as to how he must place his fingers on the Bible. Then the judge opens the law book to find the form of the oath. As she sees him place his fingers on the book, she comes a step nearer, and it appears as though she wished to reach across the table and push his hand away. but as yet she is restrained by a faint hope. She thinks he will relent now, at the last moment. The Judge has found the place in the law book, and now he begins to administer the oath loudly and distinctly. Then he makes a pause for the defendant to repeat his words. The defendant actually starts to repeat, but he stumbles over the words, and the Judge must begin again from the beginning. Now she can no longer entertain a trace of hope. She knows now that he means to swear falsely, that he means to bring down upon himself the wrath of God, both for his life and for the life to come. She stands wringing her hands in her helplessness, and it is all her fault because she has accused him. But she was without work, she was starving and freezing. The child came near dying. To whom else should she turn for help? Never had she thought that he would be willing to commit such an execrable sin. The Judge has again administered the oath. In a few seconds the thing will have been done. The kind of thing from which there is no turning back, which can never be retrieved, never blotted out. Just as the defendant begins to repeat the oath, she rushes forward, sweeps away his outstretched hand, and seizes the Bible. It is her terrible dread which has finally given her courage. He must not swear away his soul. He must not. The court officer hastens forward instantly to take the Bible from her and to bring her to order. She has a boundless fear of all that pertains to a court of justice, and actually believes that what she has just done will bring her to prison. But she does not let go her hold on the Bible. Cost what it may, he cannot take the oath. He who would swear also runs up to take the Bible, but she resists him too. "You shall not take the oath!" she cries. "You shall not!" That which is happening naturally awakens the greatest surprise. The court attendants elbow their way up to the bar. The jurymen start to rise. The recording clerk jumps up with the ink bottle in his hand to prevent its being upset. Then the Judge shouts in a loud and angry tone, "Silence, and everybody stands perfectly still. What is the matter with you? What business have you with the Bible?" the Judge asked the plaintiff in the same hard and severe tone. Since with the courage of despair she has been able to give utterance to her distress, her anxiety has decreased so that she can answer, "He must not take the oath." "Be silent and put back the book," demands the Judge. She does not obey, but holds the book tightly with both hands. "He cannot take the oath!" she cries fiercely. "Are you so determined to win your suit?" asks the Judge sharply. "I want to withdraw the suit!" she shrieks in a high, shrill voice. "I don't want to force him to swear." "What are you shrieking about?" demands the Judge. "Have you lost your senses?" She catches her breath suddenly and tries to control herself. She hears herself how she is shrieking. The Judge will think she has gone mad if she cannot say what she would say calmly. She struggles with herself again to get control of her voice, and this time she succeeds. She says slowly, earnestly, and clearly, as she looks the Judge in the face, "I wish to withdraw the suit. He is the father of the child. I am still fond of him. I don't wish him to swear falsely." She stands erect and resolute, facing the Judge's table, all the while looking the Judge square in the face. He sits with both hands resting on the table, and for a long while does not take his eyes off from her. While the Judge is looking at her, a great change comes over him. All the ennui and displeasure in his face vanishes, and the large, rough-hewn visage becomes beautiful with the most beautiful emotion. "Ah, see!" he thinks. "Ah, see! Such is the mettle of my people. I shall not be vexed at them when there is so much love and goodliness even in one of the humblest." Suddenly the Judge feels his eyes fill up with tears. Then he pulls himself together, almost ashamed, and casts a hasty glance about him. He sees that the clerks and bailiffs and the whole long row of jurymen are leaning forward and looking at the girl who stands before the Judge's table, with the Bible hugged close to her. And he sees a light in their faces, as though they had seen something very beautiful, which had made them happy all the way into their souls. Then the Judge casts a glance over the spectators, and he sees that they all breathe a quick sigh of relief, as if they had just heard what they had longed above everything to hear. Finally the Judge looks at the defendant. Now it is he who stands with lowered head and looks at the floor. The Judge turns once more to the poor girl. "It shall be as you wish," he says. "The case shall be stricken from the calendar." This to the recording clerk. The defendant makes a move, as though he wished to interpose an objection. "Well, what now?" the Judge bellows at him. "Have you anything against it?" The defendant's head hangs lower and lower, and he says almost inaudibly, "Oh, no, I dare say it's best to let it go that way." The Judge sits still a moment more, and then he pushes the heavy chair back, rises and walks around the table and up to the plaintiff. "Thank you," he says, and gives her his hand. She has laid down the Bible, and stands wiping away the tears with the crumpled up handkerchief. "Thank you," says the Judge once more, taking her hand and shaking it as if it belonged to a real man's man. End of section 1, read by Lars Rolander.